have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.
Welcome, everyone. We have a special guest today, and this is a gentleman I've been reading about, watching, and buckle up. He's got a lot of great information he's going to share. Just who he is, you'll find out here in a hurry. There's just something about him that makes him magnetic. Jordan Montgomery is his name. He's a best-selling author, USA Today best-selling author. He is a coach. He's an entrepreneur. He works with elite athletes. He works with all kinds of different people, financial institutions, and he's got a wealth of knowledge. And so, Jordan, welcome. I appreciate you doing this.
Well, thanks for having me, Nathan. This is an honor to be here with you and hang out with your community. And listen, man, I'm learning from you, and I know you're a wealth of knowledge and so much leadership wisdom to share as well. So excited for the conversation today.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to kick it off. So I said it kind of in my intro, but you've worked with Fortune 500 companies, elite athletes, professional teams. What's something that people don't see about the world?
Yeah, I think a lot that I don't see. There's a lot that I think God wants us to see that we miss. And you know, I'm spending a lot of time right now on just the topic of self-awareness. Nathan, I think all growth and development starts with self-awareness. And the interesting part about awareness is if you run into somebody that thinks they have a lot of it, it might actually be a telltale sign that they need to grow in it. And so I work with so many leaders, whether it be an executive leader or an entrepreneur or a high-level athlete, and gosh, they're hugely successful or they're making a big impact. But my favorite kind of person is somebody who's at the top of their game. Like they're dominating, they're living in a really productive way, having a big impact. And yet they have so much humility in their desire to learn and grow. You know, John Wooden said, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. And so I get to sort of see this paradox of education. I know you see this in your work too. It's like the more that people learn, the more they realize they don't know. And so it's been such a privilege to work with folks who have a hunger and a desire to understand, to learn, to know more. I think the average person radically underestimates the work that goes into building a business like yours. You know, I heard this the other day. I just share this as an example. Ed Milet was talking about Nate Bargatze, who's one of my favorite communicators. I think Nate Bargatze's got maybe the best stage presence of any communicator on the planet, in part because he looks like he's just up there having fun. You know, it comes so natural and organic, and his delivery is just magnificent. And Ed said this, that Nate will spend over 2,000 hours on a set before he delivers that set for the first time to the public. And I thought, wow, what an awareness, what a desire to be excellent and to deliver. I mean, most people just would radically underestimate the work that's gone in to Nate getting to where he's at. So, you know, I just spend a lot of time thinking about awareness and the work that goes into building something really special and significant, and just the sense of stewardship that, hey, God gave me these gifts. I want to steward these gifts well, and I want to be excellent at what I do. I know I'm learning about that. I've got a long ways to go, but I'm spending a lot of time thinking about that topic, Nathan.
Okay, so once somebody's aware, now what?
Well, I think once you have an awareness, you have an obligation. You know, you got a duty, right? If somebody says, hey, this is an opportunity for you, or you need to grow in this area. I'll give you an example. I was speaking at an event. It was in my early 20s. It was like my first kind of big event. It was about a 3,000 person event in Chicago. And I got done with my talk, and I was speaking with the CEO of the organization, and he was really encouraging and complimentary. But then he said something I'll never forget, Nathan, off to the side of the stage. He said, your talk was really good, but I only heard about half of it. And I'm thinking, you only heard half of it. Why'd you got a hearing problem, or why'd you only hear half of it? And then he said, Jordan, you talk you talk way too fast. And it was a real moment for me in my leadership because I hadn't considered that. But now that he had shared it, I couldn't unhear it. So I had a responsibility at that point to reflect on the pace of my communication. I had heard this from obviously a very distinguished executive leader. I'd love to tell you, Nathan, I went back home and I started working on that right away. I did. It took me some more time and I had to get some more feedback. But it was kind of the first time where I said, maybe I need to reflect and slow down my movement and my body language and my speed. And so I think once you have an awareness, you have an obligation, you also have an opportunity to work on, that part of your leadership or that part of, who you are.
Okay, so here's what I'm hearing. Tell me if I'm hearing it right. Okay, self-awareness, which I agree with you. And here's the thing that I love what you said at the beginning. The minute somebody says, yeah, I'm self-aware, they got some more work to do, don't they?
Yeah.
Right?
Great.
Okay, so then it comes to the opportunity. You have an obligation and opportunity, which is really probably about regulation.
Agreed.
Right? Because if I'm aware of it, now how do I regulate it and get better with it? Am I hear that right?
Yeah, I think you got to create a system and a process.
Yeah.
I think, James Clear said it best. Goals are great for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. What's the system? What's the process that you're going to implement to grow in that area of your development or to work on that thing that you just... Now, I'd also say this. Just because somebody gave you some feedback doesn't mean that it's true.
Yeah.
So there's still some due diligence on, okay, is this accurate? Can I take it to another trusted mentor or friend to kind of verify this? We have a choice. We get to choose whether or not we're going to accept or reject somebody's feedback. But assuming that we accept it, we verify it, then I think, okay, create a system and a process so you can grow in it. How do you receive that? What are your thoughts, Nathan?
I think you're 100% right. The trouble is what I hear in that takes work.
Yes.
Yes. But you know why they call it work? Because it works.
Because it works.
But it's the you got to put that like when you bring up Nate in his stage presence, that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's 2,000 hours of just working on a set. Yeah. So I think that and you get to work with athletes, and I notice on your back wall, the greatest athlete to ever live. I argue with my son about that, Jordan.
Oh, it's MJ. Come on, there's nothing to argue about.
I know, my son, no, his generation's LeBron. But I'm a big MJ fan. But, I always like, especially when you look at athletes, you don't see all the hours in the gym when the lights aren't on. But that's where true mastery happens. I think that's what I'm hearing is that you got to put the intentional work in, build the systems, build the procedures, have the laps around the track, right?
Yeah, and all of us have a moment, I think, where we realize there's levels to this thing. There's levels to creation and building and excellence. I'll never forget, Nathan, I'll share this quick story. I had a presentation that I delivered in front of John Maxwell. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know, this is the early days of getting to know John. I didn't know that John was kind of in the room in part to evaluate me for another opportunity. And had I known that, I would have showed up to that presentation in a completely different way. I mean, I would have prepared. I would have put a lot more time in. And so he kind of walks in about halfway through my presentation. We're at a larger event. I'm just kind of leading one of the small sort of breakout sessions. And so I'm talking with him afterwards. And John, I said, if I knew you were going to be here, I mean, this could have looked different. I'm kind of joking, sort of making fun of myself. And he said, well, Jordan, and he was really encouraging. He said, you have a gift and you have an ability to connect with people. And he said, I love seeing that gift. But there's a really important question that you need to ask yourself. And then so I'm like, okay, this is great. I got one of the greatest orators of our time encouraging me. And I'm kind of I'm eating out of the palm of his hand. Okay, what's he going to say? What's the big question? Says, the question is, am I going to wing it or am I going to work at it? He said, what happens for a lot of people, Jordan, is they have a gift and they decide to wing it and they get away with it because they're gifted. So, you can just kind of turn it on and you can kind of go 80% of the way in your preparation. And then people say, oh, good job. That was great. Loved it, And then so you sort of develop this spirit of winging it and not having to prepare. And you can get away with it, but you'll never be elite at what you do if you choose to operate that way. And so John went on to tell me, he said, 50 years ago, Jordan, when I started speaking, I realized the same thing. I had a gift. God entrusted me with this gift to communicate and connect. And I decided I was going to work at it. And so he said, every day for 50 years in a row, every day, I decided to read, file, and write. And I'm going to read, file, and write. I'm going to work at the gift that God gave me. I'm going to grow my mind, grow my skill set, and I'm going to be elite. And I think that's worked out okay for John, one of the top communicators on the planet. So anyway, it was a real moment for me. And what does it look like to work at and work with the gifts that God entrusted me?
Okay, so let's pull that apart because I agree 100%. What's that look like for you?
Well, it's a number of things. I mean, first off, working at my deal, if I'm going to talk about leadership and challenge others to think about their leadership, I got to lead myself first. And then I got to lead inside the home. And then I have to think about leading at work. So leading myself means I'm developing great habits, right? We don't decide our future. We decide our habits. Our habits decide our future. So I was not always a super disciplined person growing up. I would say I've become that way today, which means I'm waking up at the same time. I'm taking care of my body every day. I'd love to say I'm in God's word every day, but that's still an opportunity. It's most days, but it's not every day. But man, the days when I start in God's word are better days. So if I'm in God's word, I'm taking care of my body, I'm waking up at a consistent time, and then I'm tending the fire in my marriage. I'm being present with my kids. Now I think I'm positioned to think through, okay, how do I lead others? Because I'm focused first on leading myself and developing healthy habits. As it pertains to leading others, I got to grow my mind. I got to make sure that I've got something to give, which means I'm taking something in. That might be a book, a podcast, it could be an online course, but I want to be a lifelong learner. I don't want to be a know-it-all. I want to be a learn-it-all, Nathan. And so I take that pretty seriously every chance I get. If I'm in the car, if I'm mowing the lawn, I still mow the lawn. It's kind of my classroom time. I listen to podcasts. I just love absorbing, new knowledge. And then my wife and my kids will tell you, as a communicator, I'm kind of crazy. I communicate to the couch. I communicate to the fridge. I communicate to the kitchen cabinets. I mean, I walk around the house. If I'm preparing for a talk or a new presentation, I can't say I put in 2,000 hours like Nate Bargatze, but I put in quite a bit of time working on, the delivery, the messaging, because I want to work at what God entrusted me with, which is the ability to communicate and connect. So that's maybe the 2-minute version of what working at it looks like. I put the same question back to you. I mean, you built something really significant. You're an incredible coach, leader, communicator, businessman. What are some of the things that you're thinking about, Nathan, related to working at it and your habits?
Hey, I'm interviewing you.
Well, I know, but
I'm just kidding.
I know you're a great leader. So you got more questions than answers.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I think it's worth talking about because I think there's nobody listening to this and say, yeah. Hey, Jordan. Hey, Nathan. I know I need to work at it. But then when you hear about Nate, 2,000 hours, you hear what John Maxwell said to you. I just heard about your routine because I think your routine is the reward. And when you make the routine your reward, you get fruits of your labor. And this isn't popular what I'm getting ready to say, and I'd love to hear your take on it. But there's a point in time in my life where I had a lot of people tell me that I needed to live, I had to have more balance. And it never resonated with me. And then I read a book and it said, hey, this idea of balance is a bunch of garbage. And why can't you be extraordinary in all areas of your life? Spiritually, physically, mentally, socially, financially, right? But that little 5 letters in front of it, extraordinary or extra? So then I said, okay, I got to put a system to it because I love what you said about systems. Well, what's my inventory of time? 168 hours a week. And I got this from Maxwell, Jordan, many, many years ago. Go and write down everything you do for every 15 minutes of the day. Now, I don't do that anymore, but every 90 days, I will go and write down, where am I really investing my time? Not wasting it, not spending it, but investing it. And so for me, that's what, you go in a hurry and go, what? I spent how much time doing what? Now, I don't want to make anybody wrong for doing those things. If those things are important, fantastic. And don't change a thing if you're happy with what your fruits are.
Yeah, well said.
So I would say, what's your take on balance?
Well, I think our life is always out of balance. I mean, it just is. It's just out of balance. And I don't know that God designed it to be perfectly balanced.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it begs the question, was Jesus, was his life balanced? I mean, if I'm doing this podcast with you, I'm doing it in part because I want to grow, want to learn, want to impact and serve people. In some way, shape, or form, it's connected to my calling and what I do, which is, that helps me provide for my family. So in some ways, I could say I'm providing for my family. But in this moment, my relationship with my kid, I'm not, connecting with Nathan isn't like, I'm not, my relationship with my 15-year-old teenage daughter isn't blossoming as a result of this activity. So my responsibility in this moment is to be fully present with Nathan Unruh.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think over time, I've tried to think about it, not in terms of, do I have perfect balance, but am I just being fully present where I'm at? And so in the same way, Nathan, if later tonight I'm with my 15-year-old daughter and, a lot of times she doesn't want to talk to dad. But if she wants to talk to dad and we get great quality time together, and I'm texting Nathan Unruh and I'm trying to connect and dig in with you, well, then I'm not fully present there. So my responsibility tonight, when I get a couple hours with my daughter after she gets home from dance practice, is I'm going to be present with Audrey. And so I think, it takes the pressure off when you stop trying to have this perfect balance. You just, what? Okay, God, help me to be present here. Help me just to live a life where I'm present, I'm attentive, and whatever I do, I want to do it under the Lord. I want to do it with all my might, with all my strength, with all my soul. Just help me, God, to represent you and be fully present with the moment in front of me. Mm-hmm. And there's some weeks where I've got a lot of personal moments that are really cool with my family. And there's other weeks where, hey, I got some more professional moments. I hope there's always both of those moments in a day, right? But I think it takes the pressure off when you just go, God, help me to be present. I don't need to have this perfect balance.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Okay, so I want to shift gears for a moment, Jordan. I want to talk, because we oftentimes talk about our successes and you got to do this, you got to do that. But let's talk about adversity. Let's talk about failure. What's some of the biggest adversities or failures that have helped shape you?
Well, April 1st, 2015 was probably the hardest day of my relatively short, pretty easy life. So I say that just to say there's other folks that have gone through stuff that's far tougher and more difficult. But April 1st, 2015, Nathan, I was a financial advisor. And I was having a lot of what I would refer to as worldly success. So I'm making a bunch of money. I'm growing a great business. I get this big team. I'm the closing speaker at our big annual conference with the Fortune 100 company, MBA Arena. I'm building a big house. I mean, I'm working the 12 to 14-hour days. But I kind of had a problem at 27 years old. I was overexposed and I was underdeveloped, meaning my influence was ahead of my character. And we all know somebody like this. It doesn't always have to be a young person, but a lot of times it is a young person where you go, wow, they got a lot of talent. They're just lacking character. In other words, they know their goals, they just don't know their values. And the problem is if you know your goals and you don't know your values, your goals can actually take you to a place that you never intended to go. And so that was me. I'm working 12 to 14 hours a day. The business becomes an idol in my life. It becomes the thing that I'm living for and I'm finding my identity in, and I'm just living for the next deal, the next win, the next award. And it's just sort of consuming me from the inside out. The problem is you don't always see pride. Pride's a scary thing. Well, on April 1st, 2015, I get a call from my supervisor. He says, Jordan, we need to talk. Now, I'm pretty naive, right? I'm overexposed and underdeveloped. So I'm thinking, man, somebody on my team must have made a big mistake. And I said, well, actually, I don't really have time today, but maybe we could talk tomorrow. And he says, Jordan, this is the kind of meeting where you clear your calendar. I need to see you right away. So I make it to his office. A couple hours later, I drive over to his office. I walk in and I'm thinking, what could be going on here? You know? And I'll never forget, Nathan, the first words out of his mouth. He looked at me and he said, Jordan, you haven't been malicious or intentional, but you've been careless and casual. And when you're casual, you create casualties. Today will be the last day for you at our firm. And just like that, my whole life changed. And, he went on to tell me, hey, we know this person took a test for you and you didn't report it. You got some undocumented bonuses. You're behind on your case notes. You got relationship issues. I mean, he was just basically saying, I don't trust your character. I can see your talent, but I don't trust your character. And so you're going to have to go work somewhere else. Well, the problem was, Nathan, I was involved in a bunch of real estate deals. They all go sideways. They weren't structured properly. So I don't just lose my job, I lose my money. This is a Fortune 100 company. They send out a company-wide email to every single leader inside the company, which creates a chain reaction of thousands of messages to my cell phone. Horribly public, unbelievably embarrassing. I lost my job. I lost every dollar I had ever made. And now I had lost all the influence that I'd worked so hard to build. And I just went into this dark, there's this place of hiding for like multiple days. I don't know, God, what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. This was the thing that I was living for a 27-year-old guy that found his identity in this thing. It just wrecked me like from the inside out. And so about 30 days, I didn't know what the future held. I eventually got a call from a guy named Tim Bohannon, and he said, hey, you can come work for me. You got to move to Minneapolis. I didn't know anybody in Minneapolis, but okay, this is a lifeline. I'm going to go work for this guy, Tim. He said, yeah, you can rebuild a financial practice, but I really only want you to do two things. I want you to rebuild your life, and I want you to grow in your faith. No speaking, no training. You're not going to focus on anybody else. You're just going to work on yourself for 2 years. And so I moved north to Minneapolis, Nathan, and for 2 years, I read my Bible. I got mentored. I got humbled. I put my head down. I did the little things. I started spending more time with my family. And here's what I want listeners to hear. God did his best work in that valley season. So when you talk about, what you learn through adversity, somebody listening to this podcast is going through real adversity. And I don't claim to know what you're dealing with if you're listening. What I know is that when you're broken and you're on your knees, it can actually be a really powerful position because you're willing to learn. You've been humbled. You're open to receive. And maybe you didn't even create it. Maybe your story's not like mine where you didn't make some big mistake, but maybe something happened to you. It was unfair. You're dealing with a health issue or a relationship issue. Here's the point. God does amazing things from the ashes. 2 Corinthians talks about this idea that God's power is made perfect in our weakness, not our strength. And so I've just seen it time and time again in my life and in others' lives where we're broken and God uses it. Sometimes your greatest ministry comes out of your deepest hurt. That was true for me. So in this season, Nathan, to wrap it up, I met my wife. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage. And as much as I wanted God to put back together the professional elements of my life, he didn't do that right away. But what he did prepare me for is to be a husband and to be a father. And I think he had to deal with some of, the inner pride and the ego and the idolatry. Like he had to work through all that, like sometimes God's got to do something in you before he does something with you. And so I kind of start to come out of this valley season. I date this woman named Ashley. I ask her to be my wife. We get married in 2018. We've got 2 kids on top of the 2 that I was able to adopt. So we're Montgomery party of 6. And we built this beautiful life. And I look back at that terrible thing that I went through and the desert season that I had to walk through. And I'm like, man, thank God that he took me through it. Because I learned, I grew, I was stretched. And I'd say to somebody hurting, sometimes God's preparation is packaged as pain, and failing forward is a choice. I love what John says. He says, people say adversity builds character. And I don't think that's true. He said adversity builds character if you allow it to. But it's still a choice. And so, God was so good to me, but he still gave me a choice. He gave me a choice to choose to win and to choose to move forward and to choose optimism and to lean into him. And I'm thankful that I, by God's grace and with the help of other good people, made that choice. So if you're hurting and it's dark, just know this: you're not buried, you're planted. God can do amazing things through your adversity. And sometimes your greatest ministry will come out of your deepest hurt. It's not just about you. It's about how you're going to help others based on what you've been through, because you're most qualified to help the person that you used to be. And so trust that God can use every ounce of hurt adversity for good. So that's what I'd say. Well, a few thoughts on adversity. And a little bit about,
I love it. That's amazing. Now, he said something there. He said a lot of good stuff there. Overexposed and underdeveloped. Boy, that's so well said. So if you look at today, fast forward 2026, what's winning look like for Jordan Montgomery today?
Well, there's this passage that I think about a lot, Matthew 18, and the disciples are arguing about who's the greatest. And you might know this passage, Nathan, and so it'd say, Jesus, who's great? Who's the best? Tell us. What do you think? And Jesus does something kind of interesting. He grabs a child and he places the child among the disciples. And he says, truly, I tell you, unless you change and become like this child, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And what he was saying to the disciples is, I want you to have a humble dependence in how you operate and how you interact with the world and how you think about your own life, and realize that apart from me, there is no chance at greatness. And so I think winning for me today, Nathan, looks like I would humble myself. Matthew 16:24 says, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. That's what Jesus said to the disciples. But we love to talk about the take up your cross and follow Jesus part. What we don't like is the deny yourself part. Nobody wants to, it's hard to deny yourself. That's not my natural thing, to just deny myself daily. But if God's going to use me, I got to deny myself. I got to remember who's in charge. I need to die to my pride and ego. I need to consider others ahead of myself. I need to honor my wife. I need to lead my children. So those are the things that I think about in terms of winning every day. If I can have those things front and center, if I'm thinking about those things, I think the day is probably going to be a decent day. If I lose sight of those things, I'll probably get myself in trouble. So that's not maybe the sexiest answer, but that's, to me, that's what winning looks like today.
Yeah. So I want to pull apart a word you've said, and I've been doing a study on this word, and it's really the hidden sin, which is pride. And as I've been going through it, going, oh my word, guilty.
Same.
But how it shows up in so many different ways. I don't even think we are aware of it. Going back to our beginning of our conversation, becoming aware of pride is all up in us every which direction. So talk to me about pride in your world, or what you see, even what you struggle with, or you see in others that you help. Because awareness of pride is a big deal, is it not?
It is. And so often we don't know that it's in us or it's with us. It's a scary thing that way. So I'll give our listeners maybe something to think about or consider relative to your own pride. Here's a red flag for me, Nathan, that I've got a pride issue. When I feel like I deserve it, I deserve this conversation. I deserve this moment. I deserve the attention. I deserve the praise. I deserve the thing or the possession. I deserve it. The minute I start thinking that I deserve whatever it is, insert, blank, that's a pride issue. Because I know what I deserve. And apart from God's grace and his goodness and what he did for me, it's nothing at all. I don't deserve anything. And so I want to live in a constant state of gratitude and humility that, hey, I get to do this work. I get to be on a podcast with you. I'm honored, man, that somebody would give me the chance and the opportunity to share some of my story and a few thoughts and ideas. I get to go home after this and eat lunch with my wife. I get to spend time with my kids tonight and watch them compete in their activities. I get to work out later this afternoon. I get to do all that. It's like, what a blessing. I get to do those. So there might be something that right now you're like, I deserve this. Maybe you're not getting it. Hey, that's okay. You're not going to get everything you want. And then also how you live in gratitude toward the things that God's already done for you. Mm-hmm. I think gratitude, having gratitude, sharing our gratitude helps us deal with our pride. And I think being really mindful of what is it that you think you deserve. Mm-hmm. And I challenge you, if you think you deserve it, you might, I know that sounds kind of cynical, but you might have a pride issue.
Yeah, and I think it's something we got to check ourselves all the time, don't we?
We do. And C.S. Lewis calls it the chief sin. He says, pride is actually the root of all other sin.
Mm. Yeah.
Something to consider and think about,
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. I want the listeners to be able to go read about you, learn more about you. I want you to talk about your book, The Art of Encouragement, which I have to remind myself to be more encouraging all the time. So I love your book. So talk about that book for a minute. Yeah.
I just wrote a book that, John said, hey, write about the thing that comes most natural to you. And I just have always enjoyed being around encouraging people. I'm kind of a glass half full kind of person. I'm optimistic. And so I started to think about, okay, the people who've encouraged me, what are the qualities? What are the traits? What do they do? What do they not do? And so that's what the book's about. It's about how to encourage. It's kind of a how-to book on encouraging your family, your friends, your spouse, the people you work with, and building trust. MontgomeryCompanies.com is our website. We're fairly active on social media, LinkedIn and Instagram. And I just say, if somebody's listening, they got a question, they want to connect, send me a DM. I'll try to respond and be of value. I don't know that I have the answer to your question or that I can help every person, but I would certainly jump at the opportunity to help and serve. So, and Nathan, let me just say this, man, you have such a kind spirit you have such an encouraging spirit. We get on this Zoom call, we're recording this podcast, and you great energy, you're well prepared. You immediately point out some things that you love about some of the work we're doing. And so I love that I got the opportunity to hang with you, man. So I want to say you're a great interviewer. You're super intentional. And I look at what you've built. I'm like, man, you're having a huge impact, and I'm excited to continue to learn from you.
I appreciate those words. Would you do me a favor?
Sure.
Would you call my wife and my children and tell them what you just said?
I'm on it. Yeah, I'm on it. Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna wrap it up with this. Is you get the opportunity to work with a lot of high performers. You get to be around some very great leaders. You get to share the stage with some amazing leaders. What have you found in your journey of what great leadership looks like?
I think great leadership looks like, this sounds backwards, followership. I think it looks like following. I think the first step in leading is following. And I think for so many of us, we forget that. We forget that if you're leading well, it means you're also following well. There's this axiom that if you're too big to follow, you're too small to lead. And, I just use John Maxwell again as the example. if you go to dinner with John or you're in a room with John, you could almost guarantee he's going to ask more questions than everybody else. And he's genuinely curious. He wants to learn. He wants to grow. He wants to tap into other people's wisdom. He wants to empower people, make them feel bigger. He's a lifelong learner. And so I think there's a coachability, an attitude of humility, a desire to grow, a sense of stewardship. I want to steward what God gave me that great leaders, almost all great leaders have. And so maybe I just challenge our listeners with, how are you doing at following? If somebody rated you on a scale of how coachable you are, are you good at following? You ask questions. Are you open-minded? You operate with humility. To me, that is the one for sure kind of common denominator among truly great, effective leaders. They never stop following.
Well said. Okay, last question. Promise. Yeah. Do you do the one-word process?
I used to years ago. Candidly, I did not do a one word, and for no good reason. I didn't slow down to do it this year. But that's my transparent truth, is I do not have a word for you. If that's your
okay. Well, I have, my word is love for the year, and so I'm pulling apart every opportunity I can. What does this word love mean? I go to Scripture in Corinthians, 13, 4-7. I'm looking at that, but I was going through in preparing to talk with you today, and I came across this statement that you made somewhere. It might be in your book, but I have it sitting here, and it says, why do most people need love more than advice?
Well, we live in a world where we all want to give advice. We want to share perspective and share our truth. I think, Nathan, it goes back to humility. I sense this so many times on coaching calls, right? Like you, I coach and advise for a living. And so often my flesh, my pride and ego says, oh, let me answer that. Let me give you some wisdom. Let me share my perspective. And oftentimes I do that. But what's infinitely better than my perspective or my advice is God's truth. And so if I can get people back to God's truth, which is through love, if they know that I care, I can take them just about anywhere if I love them well. They're going to be way better off getting God's truth than Jordan Montgomery's advice. And there's that old axiom, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so I think if you're going to help anybody, and if you're going to attempt to give them advice, you got to love them first. So, there's this idea that we got to give people tough love, just tough love, right? And we just flipped that. John Gordon taught me this years ago. I don't want to give somebody tough love. I want to love them tough. I'm going to be tough on them. If I'm going to give them advice, if I'm going to challenge them, if I'm going to call them up, well, I got to love them first. They got to know that I care. I got to create a foundation of trust and rapport. And so, and then, final thing there, Nathan, is I think people want to be heard. My wife will share something with me, and I want to give her advice. I want to respond. And I learned this in the early years of marriage. It's important for me to slow down and say, okay, hey, babe, do you want me to respond, or do you just want me to listen? She's like, most of the time, she's like, I don't want you to respond. I'm not looking for your advice. I just need you to listen. And so I think loving people well means we just listen. You give them a place to share and be heard. And people don't have enough spaces and places where they get to truly be heard and understood. And so maybe a few thoughts. And by the way, I think that's from Bob Goff. Most people need love more than they need advice. It's always stuck with me.
I love it. Well, thank you for this time. A lot of nuggets. I'd encourage you, as you listen to this, go back and listen to it. There's a lot of things here. If you pull apart and go do the work with it, it can make a big impact in your life. Jordan, I appreciate the time. I'd encourage you also, everyone, as you listen, go get his book, The Art of Encouragement. Go follow him on, how do they follow you? Where would they follow you?
Yeah, Instagram is just Jordan M, middle initial Michael, so Jordan M Montgomery. And then LinkedIn, just, Jordan Montgomery. And love to connect there. Send me a message. Would love to get linked up.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it, my friend.
God bless you, Nathan. Be
You
well.
bet.